this is how I go about creating new JPEG recipes for Fujifilm. Alright, it's been a few months since the X100VI came out. I've had it pretty much since the beginning, and I'm carrying it with me every single day. So just like, can you believe it was 7 years ago when I got my X100F? So just like 7 years ago when I got my X100F and I was in Japan making a whole series of videos, and just naturally, organically just fell in love with that camera. You fell in love with it on the channel, and it just kind of created, I guess, this whole phenomenon of things. And for me, of course, I'm not saying that I'm responsible for how popular this series of cameras has become. So just like 7 years ago, fell in love with the camera, I'm in love with this camera again. Although, unlike 7 years ago, a lot of things have changed. When I bought my X100F, yes, I was in Japan making loads of videos, but things are a lot different now because now I live in Japan, and that means I get to carry this beautiful little camera with me every single day, and that is exactly what I've done. So I've always talked about the X100 series as being like a social camera, like your day-to-day carry that can also punch above its weight and can pack a real punch. And I think where I've gone through times of feeling kind of depressed and unmotivated with a lot of my work and things, the X100 series and using this as a social camera, especially when shooting JPEGs only, has been the tried and tested method that has just kept me going and has just brought back motivation for things. So in this video, I'm going to be testing and creating some new recipes. So I'm going to go through some of my process on how I actually go about doing this and making new color recipes, and then I'm going to try and create some digital variants of those, and likewise I want to try and match them into some new LUTs that I'm using for video, and try and create some sort of cohesive, consistent look between the video and the photos. And by the way, it is an absolute scorcher today. We're in June, rainy season is almost about here, and we've got a hot day. I love it. It's hot from the ground up. So when I'm going about with the intention of creating some new color profiles and recipes and things like that, first of all, you want to pick a good day that has good lighting for what you need, or for the type of things that you find yourself shooting in. So I really enjoy sunny days. I really enjoy bright, harsh light at times, with a bit of cloud cover and other stuff. So today, we're starting off super hot, really blue sky, really clear, but I know that the forecast is that as the afternoon comes on, it's going to get kind of cloudy and overcast. So that should be good to get a whole range of images that I can test and work out. What you don't want to do is get your recipes and create things for conditions that you don't normally shoot in. So look back through your images, find what you're inspired by in your own photos, and then pick a day where you can match those conditions. So the best light for me is usually in the sort of golden hours, or with like heavy buildings and sort of bright lighting and other things. And that's what I'm aiming for today. Secondly, put yourself in a location that also has the color palette that you're looking for. So of course, I'm living in Japan now, and I can tell you there's a reason. There is an absolute reason why so many of the camera companies have their particular color science and other things, because the color and the lighting and everything in Japan, it just matches. Like I've never been able to get the best out of a camera other than when I'm in Japan, and that's across all brands, whether I'm shooting Fujifilm, Panasonic, Canon, Sony. It just always seems to work so well in Japan. And of course, most cameras are made in this country, and so they do all their testing here. There's a reason, I'm telling you, there's a reason why the color science of these brands is what it is, and it's because of the environment here. But the lesson within that is to say that wherever you take your images most frequently, that's the place you want to go to when you're making these recipes, because you want to find scenarios and environments that match your common shooting scenarios. So I'm in the Nakameguro area at the moment, and this is perfect for me because it's got a whole mix of things that I like to enjoy shooting in terms of an urban environment. So we've got some nice little side alleys, we've got some big roads, we've got trains and overpasses, and plenty of greenery. And then following on from that, this spot is also pretty seasonal. So in the spring gets covered in cherry blossom and other stuff, which means that I got plenty of previous footage and images that I can go back and match to and just kind of create like a wholesome collection of things. So the way that I usually like to start is just like any day of photography really, is to kind of treat it like a sport. You need to warm up. So you just got to get used to your surroundings, you got to get used to your camera. Even if you're using it every day, you've just got to get that muscle memory. And I guess the more frequently you use it, the quicker your warm up is going to be. But I do think it's valuable to just reel off a few snaps. They're not going to be anything special, but just get yourself in the motion of taking a camera. And as I say all the time, you just got to have your camera out in your hand. Not in your bag, not waiting for the shot so you can get your camera out, is have it out in your hand so you can get your images. So I'm just warming up, getting a few images. Now at the moment, I'm creating a new recipe. However, if you're starting from scratch, things are gonna be a little bit different. So because I'm creating a new recipe, I'm just gonna go with a tried and tested of what I already know. And that's my cozy chrome recipe, which I've been talking about for the last like 3 or 4 years now. It just works for me almost every single day. It's only changed slightly over the few years or so that I've been using it. And yeah, Cozy Chrome has been my go-to, but I want to create some for just different scenarios. So I'm starting off with Cozy Chrome, getting a load of images. If you haven't created a recipe at all yet, be my guest, use Cozy Chrome. I'm going to put the settings on the screen for you right now. Or what could be good is to just go through the film simulations and just start from zeroed out everything and then choose your favorite film simulation. In my case, that could be classic Chrome. For you, it may be something different. And then we move on to the other settings, which I'll come to in a moment. So I'm going to be starting from scratch, making a film simulation. And because I'm on the X100VI, I've got access to the new film simulation, Reala Ace. And so I kind of want to make something that uses Reala Ace and get a feel for, you know, how it works as a film simulation. I don't actually know too much about it other than its description, which says it's quite versatile. Actually, what do they say about it? It's a faithful color reproduction with hard tonality suitable for various scenes. So faithful, I like, because it means that it's kind of true to the scene, which gives you versatility to kind of create your own image off of something that's actually what it looks like. And then with hard tonality suitable for various scenes. So hard tonality meaning that it's kind of got some like contrast to it. It's going to have a bit of like shape and structure. And then of course I can play with my shadow and highlight settings to either enhance that or reduce that to get great JPEG results. Of course, when you take the RAWs into Lightroom or Capture One or whatever you want to use, you can go and make your own things. But the image processing in the camera is what's so fun to use. Likewise, it's good to have it on the viewfinder because you can see the results that you're getting direct to the viewfinder. And so I shoot RAW plus JPEG. A lot of the times what I share on my Instagram stories are the JPEGs, and then things that I do as posts or in like portfolio work over the years and things, that's pretty much always the RAW image. But if I can create something that looks good through the viewfinder as I'm taking it, it gives me a good idea of what I want to edit later, if I even want to edit it. So I usually aim to just find like a bit of a scene that's somewhat neutral, and that's exactly what I've done here. So I walk past this little street, I like the concrete, I like the greenery, I like the light that's coming in, there's some shadows to work with, and then I can just start to make my tests on other things based on what I'm seeing. So my first tip is actually to enable your Q menu to have all 16 options available. So in the grid, so you go into your settings and then you go into your screen setup and you can give it 16 slots. So I've created a little setup that gives me access to all my controls that I need, such as my shadow, my highlight, the white balance settings, the film simulation, and a few other things that just make it quick to change. From there, I'll then enable the transparent view on the grid. So as I'm viewing through the viewfinder, I can open the quick menu and I can start to make changes and adjustments, and I can see it kind of a little bit obstructed, but I can see it through the menu itself. Okay, so the ND is going to be creating some color shift on the screen. Just kind of ignore that for the minute. So on the Q menu, I've got these 16 tools and controls available to me. So most commonly used ones for me are the ND filter and the focus modes and other things. That actually doesn't have an effect too much on the actual picture in terms of creating a recipe. The ND does have a little bit of a color shift, but it's actually pretty accurate. So you can see I've got the transparent menu. And so what I would do here is I'll just go down to things like my shadow and highlight tone, and I can make those adjustments based on what I'm seeing in the background. And that makes it super useful to just get an idea of your picture as you're making your adjustments. Now, I don't know about you, but I do feel like the numbering for the shadow and highlight isn't quite intuitive. The shadows in particular, I feel like the +1, 2 and -1 and 2 are kind of opposite to what I'd expect. Like for me, -2 should mean that my shadows are darker. But I think they actually mean that they're brighter. Like there's less shadow tone. It throws me off every time, and that's why having the transparent menu enabled makes it super useful. You can go in and do that. Likewise, if you do it in the menus themselves and you see the curve grid, then you can see the adjustments happening. The numbers, they just feel opposite, and then likewise spinning the dial also feels like it goes the wrong way. So Fujifilm, you need to sort that out and change it, because it feels opposite. I don't know about you, do you think the same? So I've been spending a little bit of time just sort of playing around with a few settings and things. So I'm wanting to make a recipe that uses the Reala ACE simulation, which is one of the new ones, which is on the X100VI. I'm hoping they do a firmware update to bring it to other cameras. It'd be nice to have it on the X-H2S. Yeah, because it's kind of interesting to use. And one of the vibes that I want is something that's quite sort of warm, quite summery, that just sort of utilizes a lot of the natural colors, but also accentuates some of the urban tones like concrete and the way that light falls onto concrete, which at times concrete can be quite cool and sort of like blue undertones and sort of like gray levels to things. But I want to accentuate some of the warmer tones yeah, just give it like a sort of vibrant vibe, I guess. So the settings that I'm working with for the moment, and this may change by the end of the video, is the Reala ACE film simulation. I've got the shadows set to +1, which actually means that they are one little bit darker on the curve. And I have the highlights set to -2, so that's going to bring the highlights down just to give it a nice roll off, so we're not getting like super bright highlights. Reduces some of that contrast in the scene a little bit, I guess. And then I have my dynamic range set to 400. I pretty much use this across all of my recipes. It just maximizes the sensor's potential, raises the base ISO a little bit just to make sure that it's getting all of that detail for the shadows and other things. And I think depending on the camera, perhaps correct me if I'm wrong on this, it raises the base ISO to a slightly different level. So I can see on here the base ISO is going to 500, but I think when I've done it on the X-T4 and previous cameras, the base ISO went to 640. Not entirely sure, but anyway, I think the secret weapon to good film simulations is to do the dynamic range 400. You just get great results. And honestly, the whole fallacy of shooting at your lowest ISO, don't even argue with me on that. It's just, I think it's kind of stupid. It goes in the same bucket as shooting full frame. So, and then following on from that, I have the color set to +2. So that just increases some of that sort of vibrancy and saturation a little bit. That's the one that I'm sort of tweaking a little bit and seeing where I feel comfortable. And then finally, and this is where you get most of the sort of color control and change and variance and things, I'm using a color shift on the white balance of an R3 and a blue -3. So what that does is it just kind of like adds more warmer tones to things. It just sort of shifts the white point towards the reds and oranges a little bit, and just creates like a nice warm vibe. Now it's going to be interesting to know how that recipe is going to look on a day that isn't bright, that isn't summery. It may overdo it slightly, so that's where you can kind of adjust it. And quick little tip here is if you go into your white balance settings, you'll notice that it remembers the white balance shift on each of the preset modes. So what I do is when I've found the shift that I like, I go and apply it to things like the white balance auto, the white balance ambient, different sort of daylight or shade modes and other things, so that way as the scenery changes it still maintains that color shift. The Kelvin is an interesting one because when you set a certain temperature and you do the shift, it's fine, but if you go and change that temperature, you got to reapply the shift. So that's sometimes a little bit annoying to have to go and redo it. And then the final thing is I actually usually leave the white balance white priority at 0, just so that I can very quickly get an image that is actually correct in terms of the white balance, because sometimes you do get scenes where the light is a bit mixed and other things. You just need a quick way to just go back to 0, and that's white balance white priority. But most of the time I'm actually using white balance ambience priority, and yeah, it seems to do a good job for me. I wish there were more ways of adjusting the color though, like on the new Lumix S9, doing the whole LUTs and other things, and extra shift. That is a pretty good thing, and Fujifilm really need to implement some extra details on that for more customization. Customization is always good. So keen to get a bike. Thought whilst I'm in Nakameguro, let me check out Tokyo Bike. Alright, switching gears a little bit, I've come out to Shibuya and it's obviously nighttime. And the reason, of course, is because I want to make recipes that also work for the nighttime. So I've actually been working on a few for a number of months. Since I started shooting with the X100VI back in February, and there's a location here that I absolutely love. It's got so much light happening, so much like color and opportunity for an urban cityscape that allows me to just test a recipe perfectly. So I actually posted this shot on my Instagram previously, but in the time since, I've been working on some new recipes whilst I've been at home in Osaka, and I'm going to put them to the test here. So I've got a few options here that I'm working on. And I'm really trying to be a little bit creative in color sort of shifting on things. So like going slightly yellow with the Night Venom style, and also some more like blue and warm tints, playing around between classic chrome and Reala Ace, and yeah, having a lot of fun with it. So what I found at nighttime is that actually one of the best things you can do is to really fix your white balance, and I actually like to fix my white balance on a specific Kelvin. So at the moment, the ones that I'm working on, if I'm going like for real blue images, I'm setting it to around 3200, and then I'm doing the white balance shift afterwards. But if I want something a little bit warmer, maybe I'll go to like 52 or 56, which is kind of like daylight anyway. Or I may push it even warmer and then just adjust things, maybe bring the saturation down and experiment with it. However, there's a benefit. You don't have to do everything all in the street. It's obviously nice to do it in camera, but where you find little tweaks and things that you may have wanted to adjust, you can actually do it afterwards. Now you can do it afterwards in the camera, you can push and pull your processing, or you can send it home and you can open up the Fuji X100VI Studio app and you can start making some new tweaks, back up your recipes, create new ones, and let's go and do that right now. Alright, so welcome back to my home in Osaka. This is actually my new desk setup, and I've been working on it for the last 7-8 months or so, and you better believe I've been filming it as well. So that's just a little tease to say that this whole setup, which is still very much a work in progress, is going to be in a new video coming very, very soon. It's almost ready. I'm really happy with it. But anyway, the reason that we're here is because I want to showcase how you can fine-tune and tweak your JPEG recipes after you've actually taken the images. So you don't need to always do everything in camera. You can actually tweak it, finesse it, and test it against different images once you come back to your computer. So using a piece of software from Fujifilm called the X100VI Studio app, you connect up your camera and then you browse to your files. So I actually have my files stored in Lightroom normally, and they're all just referenced on an SSD. So as you know, the images you take in your Fujifilm that you then process and view in something like Lightroom or Capture One will never have the exact replication of what Fujifilm's color science is supposed to be. All of those
profiles and other things that you see in Lightroom for classic chrome, classic negative, and all the other film simulations, they're all just an assumption of what it's supposed to be. It's Adobe's interpretation of how that film simulation should look. They're not the exact connection and conversion as it was in camera. And that's why when we talk about Fujifilm JPEGs having incredible image quality, it's because it's been processed using Fujifilm's color science in the camera. The only way you can access that remotely with your RAW files is with the XRAW Studio app. And the way that you do that is you actually have to connect your camera via USB and plug it into your computer and then browse your RAW files. So you actually have to use the camera that was used, or at least a model of the same camera that was used to take that original image, to then be able to reprocess it again. Something doesn't quite sound incredibly correct about it. Like, I sort of feel like the processing power of latest computers and everything should be able to handle doing this image processing. Maybe it's just an industry secrecy thing, I'm not sure. But you have to connect your camera via USB in order to access that image processing power. So if we jump into XRAW Studio app now, you can see I've got my image that I was using, my base image, and I got my camera connected. Over on the top left, it says here X100VI and the version number and everything else. And then over on the right hand side, this is where we've got all different camera profiles and recipes as such. So the ones that are saved in the camera, you can have up to 7. These are the ones that I've got saved in the camera, and those I can access, and using this image that was taken on that same camera, I can reprocess it using the profiles and recipes that I've created in the camera. But I can also then save any of these processes, or I can make changes. So let's say I want to, see how this one looks with a different film simulation. Maybe I want to see a black and white version. I want to use the across film simulation, or, a Turner, something like that. I can make all of those changes, or I can just, one click go into the settings that I want, and then I can save them to my computer. So I can actually back up these settings and save them. So within my user profiles here, you can see I've actually got a few different variations. So my most recent recipe that I was creating earlier in this video is the new Summer Ace one. And I've gone through and I've made a few different tweaks, and I've got up to version 6. And so this is a recipe that I'm super happy with. This is the one that I am sort of going forward with as my recipe for the summer, for my everyday images. And yeah, this is how it's looking. And if I want to, I can go on to, say, another image like this one, and I can process it with that same Summer Ace settings. Now you'll notice that I was throughout the video carrying this. This is the Color Checker Passport, and it's an accurate analog representation of very specific color profiles. So an accurate chip for blue, magenta, and yellow, and just different shades of gray and black and all sorts. I can then reference that digitally, and I can make an accurate connection between image and video, or video to video, print to wherever. And that is probably one of the best ways of creating a cohesive collection between your media. So I've been doing a lot of testing with this. I've got footage in F-Log2, I've got images in JPEGs, in RAWs, and video that has those color profiles baked in. And I've been working on a series of LUTs and Lightroom presets that can match them all together. And they are very, very much almost ready. The LUTs I will be releasing fairly soon. And I've even been able to create new styles and other things that have been inspired by those original Fujifilm colors. In fact, the video earlier you would have seen was using my Cozy Chrome LUT. I'm still tweaking a few things just to get it correct and versatile across videos, but that's something that has been really exciting for me for the last few months or so, going out every day testing and creating different things. If you sign up with the link below, you'll get an email of when they'll become available, and it should be very soon, alongside that brand new desk setup video. So that's a quick introduction to Fuji XRAW Studio app. I've actually made a video a few years back going through the ins and outs of it. If you want to see more detail on it, you can find that on the channel, also linked in the description. But otherwise, that's it from me. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the new recipe and go out and shoot some more this summer. All right, catch you soon. See you later. Bye bye.